Hey, fifth grade. Today for poetry, we're still reading poems about cats and dogs. So we started a new grouping yesterday, and now we are ready to read two more poems within that grouping. Yesterday we read two poems about dogs. Today we're going to read two poems about cats. So stay with me here. We're going to read these poems and then we're going to talk about some features that I want you to notice. And then, of course, I'll tell you what I want you to go in and look for. Today's poems are about cat comfort. Two macho seventh grade guys, one a skateboarder and a heavy metal guitarist, the other a champion swimmer, recognize the pleasure and the solace to be found in feline companionship. All right, guys, go ahead and follow along with me as I read Love That Cat first, and then we'll come down here to Cat Smile. Love that cat. Velvet black fur curls up in the corner of a creamy couch. White-tipped paws stretch past white-tipped whiskers. Arching his back, he slips off the cushion and tiptoes across the wooden floor to where I wait. Glowing eyes stare into mine before he leaps to my chest, hunting until I stroke his soft coat. He purrs his love for me. I pet my love for him. Now we're going to read Cat Smile. My mood is not good. Tired, frustrated, angry. The day has been hard and saddening, littered with bad luck and shame. I collapse on the couch with a sigh beside my sleeping cat. She wakes, yawns, stares at me expectantly. I scratch her ears. She smiles with pleasure. The cloud that has hung over me drifts away. All right, guys, when you go back into these two poems, I'm going to have you guys add comments about what Michael and Niall did here as poets and pet lovers that you can appreciate. So you're basically going to go in and identify 3 places that you can relate to, either as a cat lover yourself or as a poet or just as a person who's owned a pet in general. But before we do that, I want to point out some things that I noticed in the poems. Not things that I can necessarily relate to, but I want to talk about writing specific things. So this title, let's talk about this title here. This is about a specific experience with the cat, not just about the cat in general. I think it's important to think about that. We've had the lesson on the rule of write about a pebble. I love that when Michael wrote this poem, he wrote about a specific interaction with his cat. And the same thing with Niall. Like, he had a bad day, and so he wrote about that bad day and how the cat made him feel better. He didn't write about all bad days. He wrote about one specific bad day. And Michael Stoltz did the same thing in Love That Cat. It was just one day. It wasn't about all of his interactions with the cat, just one experience. And then I also wanted to draw your attention to how visual and sensory this poem is here. Velvet black fur. Velvet doesn't just describe the fur, it also then lets us think about how the cat feels, because if you know what velvet is, you know it's soft and so he's giving us sensory details so that we not only can see the cat but get to interact with the cat also, because he's giving us the means to do that with those sensory details. And so the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about in this poem was a mini lesson that we had just this week when we were talking about line breaks. Notice how his line endings are all strong words, and that he was intentional about where he cut it off. So he paid attention to where a reader would need to breathe. He made sure that he ended with strong words. And I also want to point out that this is all one sentence right here, but it's actually 3 lines in this poem. So he capitalized the beginning of a sentence, but not the middle, and he punctuated at the end of his sentence. So in that lesson, Breaking Lines and Stanzas and Punctuating, I talked about how most free verse poets just punctuate the way they would normally if they wrote it as a prose sentence. And so this demonstrates that. He broke the line where he needed to break the line for the sound and for the reader to have breathing room or rest, but he continued to punctuate and capitalize as if it were a normal prose sentence. So you don't see a capital letter here or here, because if you were to write that all in one line in a paragraph, you wouldn't capitalize the C in curls or the O in of. So I wanted to point that out for you. That's what that lesson was talking about. And then I also wanted to point out that he used alliteration in this poem. And alliteration is the repetition of a sound very close together in a group of text. So he's repeating the k sound in this first 3 lines. So let's take a look at what I mean. Velvet fur curls up in the corner of a creamy ouch. So that adds to the rhythm and the way that the poem sounds when you read it aloud. And then I want to jump over here to Cat Smile and give you a few, draw your attention to a few things also. So figurative language is at play here when it says the day has been hard and saddening, littered with bad luck and shame. When you think about littering, you're like throwing things out, right? Like trash. And it's actually against the law to litter, to just throw your trash down. And so he's using figurative language. This is not literal. So his day doesn't have bad luck and shame being thrown into it, but that's how it feels. It feels like somebody keeps throwing trash into his day. And so there's some figurative language going on there. And then we've been talking about mood and tone a lot as readers. And so if we look at this, he flat out tells us, my mood is not good. Tired, frustrated, angry. The day has been hard and saddening, littered with bad luck and shame. This is a very stressed tone in this stanza. Then we look at how that tone shifts in this next stanza. I collapse on the couch with a sigh beside my sleeping cat. She wakes, yawns, stares at me expectantly. I scratch her ears. She smiles with pleasure. Are you still feeling that tense or stressed tone in this stanza? Absolutely not. And then he tells you that. The cloud that has hung over me drifts away. So that cat has taken that stress away. The tone is relieved because he's now at home and he's receiving that cat comfort that I told you about at the beginning. And then those last 2 lines and stanzas of that poem, it mimics a cloud drifting away because of how the lines are broken. So you can see how this one's long and this one's short, kind of drifting. The words are kind of drifting away. So these poets did a lot in their poems about their cats. They played around with some different techniques as writers, and they used some of those things that we learned about in our writing lesson just this week. So remember that to turn this assignment in, I'm asking you to go back into either of the poems, or both if you want, and comment on the things you can relate to as a cat lover, maybe, or a pet owner, or a poet. Okay? 3 things you can relate to or that you notice. Okay? And then as writers, I'm going to go ahead and give the benediction so we can think about how we can mimic what we've seen in these poems in our own writing. As poets, look for particular moments with your cat or dog. These are poems that will reveal who your pet is and what your relationship is like. I think I need to take that advice on my poem about Albus. It's missing something, and I think I know what I need to do to fix it now. So hopefully this lesson helped you understand more about pets, more about yourself as a person, and more about yourself as a writer. I love and miss you guys, and I will see you soon.